Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am so happy you're with us today. We're going to talk about experiences working with youth. And my guest today, you've seen her before, is Charlynne Boddie. And Charlynne is somebody who is an amazing person. Probably the most accomplished person in terms of life experiences I've ever met. And last time I mentioned that she is kind of my real life Forrest Gump. And I'm going to ask her to share what the heck I'm talking about when I say this. But I just want to also tell you that she's the author of a book called True Grid, and you can get it on Amazon. Amazing, amazing person. Charlynne, welcome to Finding Better.
Oh, John, it's so good to see you again.
Okay, so we're just going to get right into it. We're going to talk about youth. Now, you work with, well, let me rephrase it. There's nobody you don't work with. And but what I'd like to talk with you today about is your experiences in dealing with youth. But before we get there, um, I'd like you to kind of share some of the highlights and lowlights of your life in
Okay.
terms of why I call you the Forrest Gump of my life. And from anyway, I'm just gonna leave it to you. So, Charlynne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, John, I'll hit some of those highs and lows that you talked about. Um, in the beginning of my media career, I was a federal employee, and that opened the door for me in many ways in DC. So at this time in my life, I can tell your viewers I've done assignments for three sitting US presidents, from Reagan to Clinton to George Bush Jr. And I've worked some of America's biggest natural disasters in that capacity. Um, and it's been very exciting. I loved serving my country, always will, always do. But after I left the White House, I also started my own television show in Hollywood that was seen around the world by 312 million people. It was a film review show that I did with my sister called Real Sisters. We had every major director on, every star you could think of in the time that our show was on. And but in those times, though, John, there was the low points as well. So I am the survivor and overcomer of a head-on collision where I was hit by two cars at once. They had to cut my body out of the car. I've had three major collisions I didn't cause. There's been heart attacks. There's been blindness in both of my eyes. And that story of going from blindness to sight made national news in the United Kingdom. The BBC covered my story and 12 other news outlets. Um, I've had several internal injuries from those hits. So there's been a lot of highs and lows. Many times I've almost died. I've been abducted twice, and I was almost beheaded in the United Kingdom by someone who was an extremist who hated Americans. So you see me sitting here talking to your viewers, and it's a miracle. I've led a life of miracles. So that's what I'd say.
Welcome to the show, Forrest Gump. Um, okay, so you jumped right from high to the White House. Now, you
Yeah.
were raised in a single parent family,
Yes, I was.
right? And
Yeah.
so you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
No, sir.
And somehow you made your way to working in the White House.
Yes.
Um, how did that happen? And
Wow, it's wild.
sorry, you're from your humble beginnings to the White
Yes.
House. Tell us
Yeah.
about that part of your journey.
Well, at some point, working in my wonderful job for the EPA in Denver, I've always been a person of faith. So I was praying one morning and I said, Lord, I love my job. It's wonderful doing press for 6 states of the environment out west. It's so beautiful. I live in the Rocky Mountains. I said, I love my job. I love my colleagues. But Lord, I want a little more. And I really heard the Lord say, well, what is that? And I said, I'd like to work for the most powerful man in the world. And my response from the Lord was,
Okay,
you
wait,
need
wait,
to
wait,
write.
wait, 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 wait. You just came up with that and you said, I want to work for the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah, that's what I said to
You
God. I
just,
was in
I mean,
prayer.
that in your, I mean, I don't, when I, nobody of all the people that I've advised and counseled and mentored, nobody has ever answered the question of, so what do you want to do next? Nobody has said to me, I want to work for the most powerful person in the world.
Yeah.
So, way to go. And then, okay, okay, so then what happened?
Well, I heard you need to write him a letter and it needs to be concise. And on top of that, Charlynne, I want you to tell your boss today, after you write the letter that I'm going to tell you to write. I'll give you the words, but you type it up. And because I was a Fed at the time, you could put it in inter office mail and it goes right to DC right away.
And
But millions of letters
this
go.
letter is going to the President of the United States.
Yes, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to be exact. Yes.
Okay. 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 All right,
Yeah.
Forrest, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, and so I wrote the letter and I did what I heard the Lord tell me. He said, you need to tell your boss you won't be here very long. And I thought, really, Lord, that's going to go over like a ton of bricks. No one knows me in DC. I don't know anyone in DC, God. And you want me to tell my boss that after I write the letter and put it in the federal mail, stuff. And he goes, yeah. So I did what God told me to do, John. And my boss said, do you know anyone there, kiddo? I said, no, sir. He goes, I don't even know anybody in DC. He goes, other than our colleagues at the EPA. He goes, is the news release done, Char, that I asked you just where I said, I'm working on it, sir. He goes, why don't you go back out and do that? I said, God, that went over like a ton of bricks. He doesn't believe it's going to happen. But guess what? 6 weeks later, my letter had definitely got to the president's team. And they said they loved the letter. They said they already did my security check. And would I please come work at the White House?
Wow. Whoa. And then so one administration, two administrations, three administrations.
Yeah.
And somehow, yeah, and then all the ups and downs of your life. Um,
Yeah.
so from the White House to near beheading to blindness to, you didn't
Yeah.
mention Oprah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Oprah,
to just
Oprah was between the White House and Hollywood.
yeah, and so through this all, you're working with people, right?
Yeah.
And I want to get into working with youth.
Yes.
Now, um, how did all this result in what you're doing today?
Wow. I think, John, when people look at my life, and you call me the Forrest Gump, um, in your world, um, I think people look at the achievements that have happened, and they then start, saying, "How did you get there?" And the Lord gave me a coaching program called Extreme Dream, and I didn't just do it with adults who are in transition or looking for that next step in their life, but people started hiring me, John, to do Extreme Dream birthday parties for their children.
So what is it? Okay, so what can you share with the folks who are listening in terms of what the folks get out, what you teach and what you share,
Mm-hmm.
and what folks get out of that program?
Well, I think parents that have worked with me with their kids have seen kids, especially in today's world where everything is so IT generated, we're sometimes losing the ability to relate in some ways. And certainly after COVID, many parents have said, my kids have lost their vision, Shar. They've lost their ability to dream. Can you help?
Oh,
And so I help kids regain that ability to dream again. And I start telling them things about my youth. What were some of the things that I was doing as a young person? And, the first president I got to sit in front of was President Reagan. But see, John, I was only 16 then when that happened. And I start talking to young people about the value of writing, that snail mail still works.
Today.
Snail mail still works. And you know, when kids take that on board, it opens huge doors for them. The first extreme dream I did for a young man that was 12 years old, you know, when I did that seminar with him and 5 friends of his for his birthday party, what came out of that is him being mentored by one of the top F1 auto racing teams in the world.
So what is it what is it about snail mail, and what is it that you what was it that you advised that young man?
I tell kids about what I did at like as a teenager, but then I said to them, you know what? There's no favoritism in this. What worked in my life can work in your life. And I've always talked to young people about the power of thank you in a handwritten
Oh
note,
my gosh. Oh my
you
gosh.
know,
Okay.
just
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
that, you know. But also, if I go back to this young man named Ryan, if I talk about Ryan's story, he heard that I wrote an essay that made it to the U.S. Army War College, and the people at the Army War College said we got to get her in front of the president. When that, you know, hit his little ears at 12 years of age, she said, there's no favorites in this. So I'm going to write, I'm going to take my dream and apply what she did to my dream. And he said, I'm going to write to the Williams auto racing team for F1 auto racing. And he said, I know I'm only 12, but I'm going to write to them and tell them my dream to be an auto engineer. He said, I don't want to race the cars. I want to build great racing cars. And I
Wow.
just was blown away by what he said to me after that. Do you know that the Williams racing team wrote him back? They put him in their program. And he's only 12. He didn't have a driver's license. So his parents had to drive him to the school.
12 years
And
old.
12 years old.
Whoa.
And
So
his parents couldn't believe it.
so what is it that you do? Because you had mentioned that you share your experiences with these young people, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that I think that we as old people and older people,
Yes.
non-youth people, um,
Yeah.
really fail to do or are unable to do is to connect, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we want to share our stories, but I mean, the kids roll their eyes and they go, "Yeah, you're
Yeah.
old, and yeah, you grew up when you had to walk to school in the snow for 36 miles."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so so how do you connect with these young people?
I That's a really good question, John. I always say to them, I'm going to tell you stories about what I was like when I was your age. And yes, like you said, they'll roll their eyes like, oh, yeah, you were once upon a time,
Right.
you were our age, you know?
Yeah,
But
once
then I
upon a
start,
time. Yeah, it's a fairy
yeah,
tale
once
long,
upon
long
a time.
ago in a
Yeah,
kingdom with a castle. Yeah, uh-huh.
yeah, exactly. You know, in the dark ages, all that, right? They roll their
Yeah.
eyes, whatever. But then I start asking them, what is your dream? And then I say, can you verbalize it? Who wants to verbalize that dream? And then I start talking to them about how they can get there. Would they like to get there? Do you want to know how to get there? Whatever that dream is. And oh my goodness, John, you get those young people to open up. They share everything and they pour everything out. It's like a dam burst, and all this stuff comes out of them. And I'll say to them, you know what? Let's create a vision board with that. And you hear adults talking about that more now than they used to.
About
But
vision
when
boards?
about vision boards
Yeah.
or dream boards, sometimes I call it the treasure map, because it really shows what's in your heart, the treasure that's in your heart, that I believe is really what we're supposed to walk out in life. And I always tell their parents, if we let our kids go with their passion, the money will follow. They will be able to sustain themselves because they're going to be so passionate about doing what they love most with excellence, not perfection, but excellence. That's what we're shooting for, is excellence. And the parents say, well, that just sounds so crazy. And I'll tell you what, so many parents have thought that's impossible. And then when their kids are walking out that dream, what I call the extreme dream, the parents get quiet. They're silent. They're like, oh my gosh, they're doing it. Oh my gosh, she's doing it. Oh my gosh, he's doing it. And they're passing on what I do to other parents out there. And it keeps growing. Usually, John, I'm hearing from parents whose kids have been told, no, your dream is ridiculous. You'll never
Right,
get there.
right. I mean, we call them dream stealers, right?
Yes, yes.
And what strikes me in what you just said, first of all, that you ask them, do you have a dream and what is it?
Yeah,
And then you're able to draw that out of them. And
yes,
as parents, our job is to protect our kids.
yes,
And
yes.
we put it in
True.
our minds, protect our kids from unreasonable expectations because it's a tough world out there. But you know
Hmm.
what? You went to work for the White House, the most powerful man in the world, when you were 16 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, anything is possible. And we don't teach that. We don't teach that to our kids, right?
Hmm.
And by the way, I know that you don't have your own kids,
That's right.
right? And
That's right.
you're out there working with and ministering and mentoring lots and lots of children
Yeah,
out there.
I
And
do.
that is amazing, and you're in kind of a I'll call it, for lack of a better term, an advantageous position
I call
because
it that.
right because of what I just said, that parents have it in their mind they have to protect their kids. They have to give their
Yes.
kids real expectations, and they don't
Yeah.
and so that they're not disappointed.
Hmm.
You are out there saying, "Hey guys, let's go after your dream. I don't
Yeah.
care what your dream is. If it's working,
Right.
if it's going to work for an F1 race team, or if
Yes.
it's going to work at the White House, or
Yeah.
if it's becoming an astronaut, or
Yeah.
whatever
Absolutely.
it is, right? I I cannot the vision of you shaking your head and saying no, no, that you can't do that. That vision of you telling them no just doesn't happen in my head. I
No,
mean,
it doesn't. And yet, John, I have to be honest with you. At first, parents they just want to kill me at some point because they're like, you're giving them too many high expectations. And they get
yes.
mad at me until the dream happens. Now, I've had parents even here in Denver where I live say, you have lost your mind. But Denver has one of the top high schools in America and it has lots of money. And even they have called me saying, we don't know what to do with this student. Can you help us? Gotten referrals and the parents want to shoot me because they're like, this is impossible. And then they have tears coming down their face when they're watching their kid's dream on television, on national television happen. They're like, oh my gosh. And then they introduce me as their kid's mentor. But at
So,
first, they want to shoot you because they don't believe it's going to happen.
and I love that we're having this conversation because, I've got two grandkids. I've got my third coming any day now, any moment
Yay!
now. Yeah.
So
And,
good.
and this is, as a parent many years ago, well, I'm still a parent, but as a parent
Yeah.
of growing children, right?
Yes.
I reflect back on my life and as a dad, and I was always the protector, right? I was always the
Of
guy that
course.
took care of the kids and gave them realistic expectations of life.
Sure. Yes.
And for you to be saying now, let them dream. Let them
Yeah.
don't don't open their world. Don't close it,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, I just wish I'd known you, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
because it would have made me a better dad for sure. And
Well,
so,
you know what? I'm sure you were a great dad, and I know you got the kids you were given because you were the right dad for
yeah,
those kids. You're
well,
the right grandfather for your grandchildren.
yeah, and my kids and my grandkids are the type of people I want to be when I grow up. And
Well, see, that's lovely. That's so
it's one
good.
of those things where you want to give them everything. As a
Of course.
parent, you want to give them everything, but you don't want them to be, you don't want to have their life crushed. and
No.
crash
And you don't want them
and
hurt.
crash. Right. You don't want them hurt. Um,
No. Uh-uh.
and as we're doing that and we're living our lives, we're not letting them dream.
Yeah.
And I love that because you know
Yeah.
what? You know what?
Yeah.
I mean, just that one thing. The one thing
Yes.
I love about talking with folks and talking with you is that
Yeah.
people can take something out, take something out of our time together and apply it to their lives. They don't have to go by your book. They don't have, they can if they
Yeah.
want to, but they're getting
Yeah.
value out of this conversation. And I'll tell
That's the
you,
prayer.
the greatest value that I'm getting right now is let them go.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
them go and
Yeah.
encourage them and support them. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's beautiful,
Yeah.
Charlynne.
Because you know what, John, here's what I always say to people, and even the kids. I always say this to young people. I'm telling the truth. I do not lie. I am an ordained minister. I tell the truth. But I always say to them, always shoot for the stars, always shoot for the highest person in your sphere that you're trying to see your dream manifested in. Yes, they can say no, kids. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't lie to the adults either. Yes, they can
Absolutely.
say no at the top, but what if they say yes?
Yeah.
What if they say yes?
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, John, they're getting the yes.
Nine
They're
times
getting
out
the
of
yes.
10.
At least, I mean, usually my clients get the yes. And I'm talking crazy dreams young people and adults bring me.
Now,
Really crazy
now,
dreams. Crazy.
okay. So let's talk operationally here. Okay.
Yes.
You had mentioned
Yes.
the power of writing a snail mail letter.
Yes.
Is that part of it? Is that part of what happens during this process as you are mentoring these young people?
Yeah, that's part of it if it would be conducive to their dream.
Okay.
But the overall thing that I use, if you go back to the title of my book, True Grit, and that's GRID, I always
Yes.
say it takes true grit to do true grid because
Yes.
you have to run the process with the dream. But I use a grid that looks at all three parts of a person's life. And it really is the anatomy of that dream, whether you're an adult or a young person. Because I've learned that there are three parts to every dream. And I look at where a person is, a young person is right now. I look at the next 30 days in their life with them. I also help them plan goals for the next 6 months. And then I also help them plan goals for the next 1 to 5 years.
That's
And
amazing.
any young person that's worked with me,
That's
John, they've
amazing.
never not reached the dream. They all reached the dream, all of them.
Now, what are those three parts of a person's life?
Three parts are your physical realm that you work in, whether a young person has, a paper route, or whether you've got, maybe you're a Girl Scout and you're working on a badge in Girl Scouts or something, or Boy Scouts or something like that. Or that's the physical realm. It's the things you can touch. It's tangible, right?
Okay.
The other realm I look at with young people and adults is that the soulish realm, your mind, your will, and your emotions. What kind of self talk do you have up here? Is it stinking thinking, as I call it, or is it healthy self talk? If it is stinking
Right.
thinking, I'm going to help you change that into the right self talk.
I love
So
that.
that's the
Stinking
emotional
thinking.
side of a young person,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then the third part, John, is that intangible part of you that is what I call that spirit side. We have a body, soul, and spirit. Every human being has that. But the spiritual side of you, that overarching dream, that is where the vision is. Your true self, that vision that has your name on it that only you can do. And then we start looking at that. How do we put that into bite-sized manageable chunks? And that is, it's 9 squares in the grid, 3 squares for each part. So there's 9 squares, 3 squares for each part of that person, that dream that they have. And we see it come into fruition every time.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And you talk about this in your book, True
I sure
Grit.
do. And the
Yeah.
actual grid, just for your viewers, parents and young people who may be listening, that grid is in the early part of the book. True
Okay.
grid.
Okay. And this can apply to youth. This can apply to adults. This can apply to
Couples,
green
singles.
people. This can apply to orange orange people
Yeah, yeah.
to
Every person in the world and business leaders have had me teach it to their leadership teams. Youth group leaders have had me bring it to their youth. I think the largest youth group I had for this, John, to teach it to and speak to it about in person was 135 young people in the United Kingdom.
wow. Wow.
But the
That is
biggest class
amazing.
was 1,000 people. 1,000 people. That was my first class for Extreme Dream. And it was the age group was age 20 to 65, and all of them had lost their jobs.
And probably most of them forgot their dreams,
Oh yeah, they were crying.
and that
John, I'm not
was,
going to lie to you, they were crying. In
yeah.
that first class of 1,000 people, they were crying. They were so anxious and depressed, and yeah, they were crying.
So the amazing power of giving hope. Yeah.
Yeah,
And not only
yeah.
giving hope, but giving them a path.
Mm-hmm.
And that is amazing, Charlynne. Um, we're gonna have to wrap this up here. I could go on talking with you forever. Um, and but I'll tell you, it goes back I mean, if we were to encapsulate this into a sentence or two, for me, this has been um, grow your dream,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
to us really great parents, us really
Yeah.
great parents who encourage our kids and inspire our
Yes.
kids and protect our kids and inadvertently and unknowingly kill their ability to dream.
Yeah. Sometimes that
Let's
happens. Yeah.
right? I mean, it
Hmm.
happens a lot, right? I
It
mean,
does.
to the best, the most
Yeah.
well-intended people, right?
That's right.
Be reasonable. Be
Yes.
reasonable.
Yeah. I
You
see it
really
all the time, John.
right, exactly. I mean, let's
Hmm.
convert our thinking, our stinking thinking from
Yes.
from being dream managers to dream makers.
Yeah. Come on. Come on, John.
And let's do this. Let's do this. You know, like you, one of my best friends is my karate instructor. He's been my karate
Yes.
instructor for many, many, many years. And
Oh, bless him.
we just celebrated his dojo's 50th year.
Oh,
50
that's so
years.
exciting. I
And
love that.
during these 50 years, there have been thousands and thousands of young people, youth, kids, under 18 that have come under that have learned karate with
Sure.
us. And this man remembers every one of their names. He doesn't have his
Really?
own kids. He doesn't have his own kids, but he remembers. And I'll never forget. We're in a bar, and we're just having a drink, and this gentleman comes up to us, and he must have been in his 50s, and he says, "Hey, Sensei," he says, "Do
Oh,
you remember me?" And so we call him Sensei. He looks at me and
yes.
goes, "Tommy." Tommy was in his dojo 40 years earlier,
Come on.
and he remembered his name, and he
Bless his
remembered who he
heart.
was, and he remembered his parents' name. And, I mean, the impact that Sensei has had on the lives of thousands of kids, it's all
Believe
about
it.
love. It's all
It
about
is.
love.
Yes, it is.
But one of the things that I've learned from you is sometimes, again, our love can go
Yes.
astray with the greatest with
Yeah.
the greatest of intentions of what we want to do,
Yeah.
but we just don't know what we're
Yeah.
doing.
It can snuff out a dream.
Yeah,
And I've seen
yeah,
parents crying, saying, "What are you telling my child? What are you
yeah.
telling my baby?" And I said, "I'm telling them how, with wisdom, how to reach a dream that will set them up for their life."
You just said something that is so important, and it's the whole foundation of this podcast. You said with wisdom. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
you're sharing your life. You're sharing what's happened with you. And you're
Mm.
not just out there as an infomercial saying you too could have a great life, right? You're
No,
sitting
no,
you're
no.
giving them the tools. You're giving them
Yeah.
um, uh, you're giving them you. And
Yeah. And
gosh,
in that, John, I'm telling them how to deal with setbacks as well. You're talking to someone who's been in three severe car accidents, has had, I've been abducted twice and lived to tell the tale. I was nearly beheaded. I've been blind to the point that it made national news in England. And now I see. I was blind and now I see. I tell young people all over the globe how to deal with setbacks and overcome them, not just survive, but thrive and grow with setbacks.
are those in your book too?
Yeah, some of those things are. I'm going to do a sequel to True Grit and a sequel to my second book, No Appointments, because some of the setbacks are really in No Appointments. I tell them with detail in my second book, No Appointments. And if you don't want to read it, folks, it's both books are on Audible as well.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, listen, um, how if people want to learn more,
Yes.
where do they go? What do they do to learn more about Charlynne Boddie?
You can give me a shout on LinkedIn at Charlynne Boddie. So my last name is Boddie. First name is Charlynne. You can also give me a shout on Instagram at Charlynne Boddie, and I'll give you a shout right back. And if you're interested in having an extreme dream birthday party for your child, or want me to talk to you in depth about the book or the seminars I do for couples and families, even whole families, John, do the extreme dream journey with me.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And your books, True Grid and
No appointments necessary.
No Appointments Necessary, they are available on Amazon.
Yes.
And
And
so
Audible and Kindle.
wonderful, wonderful. Charlynne, thank you for sharing your time with us today, and thank you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. And boy, what stinking thinking
Yeah.
and best of intentions. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And encourage, support those dreams, folks. And
Yeah.
just amazing. Charlynne, thank you. I love you. Thank you for doing
Oh,
everything
thank
that you're
you, John.
doing.
Love you right back, brother.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
we're brother and sister
we
forever.
are forever, forever. Folks, thank you for coming. God bless you. I love you, and we'll see you soon. Bye.